Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Crowdfunding for Musicians. I am Magdalena Herfurtner. I am Head of Creativity and Head of Music for Greenlit. And I'm delighted to welcome Peter Story, who is the CEO and founder of Greenlit today.
Evening, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in this evening. And hopefully we'll be able to talk to you about what we're doing in the space of crowdfunding for musicians, and hopefully give you a few ideas about what you can do to develop and build your career and your fan base.
So before we jump in, if you do have any questions, any comments, please feel free to put them in the comment box right below the video. To get started, let's maybe talk a little bit about who we are and what we do. Peter?
Sure. So we started Greenlit a little over 2 years ago, and my background is actually in film production. So we started working purely doing crowdfunding for films, and in many ways a competitor to Indiegogo and Kickstarter. But we were looking at those platforms and looking at how creative people and film producers in particular were working with those platforms, and how they were successful, or more often how that wasn't working for them. So we started to look very closely at why that should be. And we came away with a lot of learnings, a lot of things that we discovered, but you can kind of boil it down to one key nugget, which is that crowdfunding is all about your audience. And there are easier ways to raise money, particularly if you're on a record label. But the unique thing about crowdfunding is it's fantastic for developing and building and deepening your relationship with your audience and your fans, and building that out. And you can do it in a way that actually raises money for you to develop projects and create more work, and whether that's recording or whether that's gigging. So that's kind of where we are. And we've just branched out into specifically saying that we will also do offerings for stage productions and also for music, because our method of helping creatives build that audience and raise money through that process, it's pretty true whatever kind of creative branch you're in.
Yeah, and you already touched on the next subject, which is what are the benefits of crowdfunding. So I personally find that there's so much more than just the funding that you get. So firstly, you really get to look at your project. You get to learn about it from the inside out, and you gain a lot of very valuable insights, whether that's during the preparation phase or later down the line when you get feedback from your audience. So for example, if you're trying to raise funds for any sort of merchandise, then maybe the feedback from your audience can really be insightful in regards to what they actually want, rather than you having to guess and essentially maybe wasting a lot of money by investing in something that the audience is not really interested in. So you can test your ideas and you can work with the feedback that you get. You can also engage with your followers on a deeper level. It's very true that your fan base will become much more invested when you bring them along to the journey. So giving them insights into how you create, how you make music, whether that's, for maybe a studio recording or during a concert preparation or whatever it is that you're doing, your fans will really appreciate learning about how you work and what the process is. And they will become much more engaged because they get to know you as a person and as an artist.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely. Yeah, I was just going to go on and say, because since we've had social media as a thing, which I guess MySpace from maybe 15 years ago, but the relationship between audience and artist has definitely shifted. And it seems to me, while every record label will have an entire digital marketing and distribution, I mean, that's what a record label fundamentally is these days. It's still not about really having a genuine and deep relationship. And people expect to see behind the scenes, and they want more. They want to see the creative process, whether that's rehearsing or songwriting or arranging or any of those things. And it cuts the other way, because certainly from my experience of speaking with filmmakers, it's been the case that talking to their audience has helped that creative process the other way. So getting that feedback. So it's not just one-way traffic about audience building. It's actually creating a more meaningful interaction there.
Absolutely. And there's something about enabling someone to create something that makes you become literally much more invested in their work than you maybe ever were before. And I've experienced this with my personal crowdfunding campaigns as well, that someone who's maybe loosely been following my work for a few years suddenly becomes really invested and is there for the long run. So that's one of the great benefits of crowdfunding. The other thing is that with all the things going on, with all the releases coming out and things happening online, it's very difficult to cut through the noise. So with a crowdfunding campaign, you create a momentum, excitement for your release or whatever it is that's coming up. And people are waiting and expecting something to happen on a certain moment. And that gives you a lot of momentum on your release date, for example. And I personally find it very motivating. Most of my campaigns have been film campaigns. Music is always a big aspect in my campaigns as well. And I really love the idea that there are maybe 300 people waiting for something to be finished. It's a very different level of motivation rather than, okay, I have something here, I hope someone is going to find it eventually.
Yeah.
You just know people are waiting for it. That's a great feeling.
Absolutely. And, I'd say we've got, recently, historically speaking, things have become very, very democratized, and we're all walking around with 48-track recording devices in our pockets, with dual microphones, and so even that goes far beyond anything that was around even 20 years ago. So the actual process of production can be much more democratic, but you're still going to struggle for visibility, and the competition is now for visibility. So how do you make your stuff stand out? Because it's that music making in whatever genre is becoming more accessible. So how do you start to make your stuff stand out? It's like visibility is as much of a currency as currency.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to the next topic, what types of music projects can you crowdfund? So obviously there are really no limitations. Any sort of musical project that you want to realize, if you can find supporters for that, then you can crowdfund it. The usual ones would be any sort of recording. So if you need to book time in the studio, if you need money for the production itself, if you need to finance other artists that are playing on your album, for example, if you need marketing budget, which obviously we all need and we never have enough of for our music releases. I've heard from a lot of musicians that they never really had the chance to produce a proper music video where you actually have a budget and you can come in with a concept and do something that's different from 3 people standing in the park and someone pointing a camera at them. So that's something that we've actually done already in the past a few times, quite successfully so. Beyond that, any sort of thing that your fan base might want to purchase, so whether that's merchandise, it might be a vinyl or a cassette release, those really have a revival in the last few years. Moving on from that, there are any sorts of shows. Hopefully we'll be able to do this in the very near future again. But if you want to finance a tour abroad that maybe just never worked out, I know some bands who had a lot of offers to play abroad, but they just quite couldn't make it because the fees that they would have gotten were not enough to cover all the costs. Or if you want to finance a showcase or a concert, maybe together with other bands, anything is possible.
Yeah, very much so. One of the interesting things about crowdfunding is it can be used to assess the viability of something. So, for example, there may be some, I know, we're on like an 8-month backlog to get any vinyl pressed at the moment. So, are you going to commit to having, 1,000 albums pressed in 8 months' time? That's quite a commercial risk, and it's quite a big risk for anybody without very deep pockets. So crowdfunding from a financial perspective is a very, very good way. You can test the proposition, and if you can sell 300 units out of that 1,000, it's worth getting 1,000 pressed. So one of the things we can do with crowdfunding is say, well, here's a threshold. So everybody puts their card details in, everybody makes the pledge, but nobody's money's taken until you hit that 300 album target. And then you've got enough money that you can proceed with that kind of investment. They all know they're going to get their albums because their money, won't have been taken in advance. They know there's enough money there to get the pressing done. And everybody's happy, and the pressing plant knows that you can pay for it. So that's the sort of audience-centric financial innovation that the crowdfunding enables, and people don't necessarily think about it in those ways.
Yeah, and that's very true. And if you, for example, launch a campaign and you have several things that you offer, some things might not be popular, others might really be a hit, and then you can focus on those things. Related to this question, what types of projects? Oftentimes we also get asked, how do I know that I'm ready to crowdfund, or can I crowdfund? What are the circumstances in which that works? And that leads to the next question. Who actually supports art campaigns, and how do you connect with these supporters? And another question we very often get is, do I already need a big fan base to make that possible?
Very good questions.
You want to answer it?
It's a very good question. I'll do my best to kick off. So who supports these campaigns? Well, it's first of all, if you need a big fan base? No, you don't necessarily need a big fan base. I mean, obviously, if you need £100,000 to hire Abbey Road for the day, you probably do need a big fan base. But for most projects that we're talking about, it's also about building that fan base. So no matter what you start to, no matter what position you're starting in, and with the number of people that follow you on the streamers or on YouTube, this is going to be an opportunity that you can grow out. And who's going to like your music? Really good question. There are all kinds of tools. You can look at comparable artists, who's listening to them, who are the influencers, who are the DJs that are playing them, who are championing them. Can you get in front of those people? That's a very good vector and a very good tactic to start to widen your base. It's all out there to play for, because crowdfunding is a terrific way. A lot of artists that we talk to are very much lacking in confidence. It's quite difficult to go out and sell yourself day in, day out, and some people seem born to this. Some people went to public school and acquired it there. Some people, like me, like Magdalena, if you're a creative person, getting it out there in front of people can be a difficult thing to do. There's a certain amount of inhibition you have to overcome. But a crowdfunding campaign gives you an excuse to do that. It's almost like, this is what I'm doing. Have a look. If you don't like it, that's absolutely fine. But you will pick up people along the way that actually do like what you've presented and what you've showcased and what you're giving. Does that get some way to answering the question? I've talked specifically about audience and fan base there. How to connect? I mean, you know plenty about marketing and promotion. That's probably, how do you connect with them, Magdalena?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things to this. So firstly, I want to say that I think crowdfunding works both for musicians who have just started out, and musicians who already have a sizable fan base. So both concepts can work. From my personal experience, when I started out with my first crowdfunding campaign, I really was not anywhere with my projects. No one really knew about me. And I really started out with my personal network, and with everyone else who was involved in the project, their personal networks. We just started to share, and it spreads from there. And over the years, I managed to build a community of people who follow my work and who like to support me. And I think that crowdfunding is a tool that can really accelerate the growth of your fan base and save you years and years of, bit by bit trying to acquire people's email addresses and trying to get yourself out there, because you have a journey that is much more interesting to follow than just the end result, the release or whatever it is. And so I think if you have no following whatsoever, just start with the people around you. If you think you don't know enough people, team up with other artists. Collaborations are a great way to exchange fans. So if you're a solo artist, maybe you want to organize a concert with 3 or 4 other musicians. If you plan a new release, maybe release a single with another band, and suddenly you might have 4, 5, 10 times the amount of people that are potentially interested in that release. So I think no matter where you are, you can get started with crowdfunding. And if you already have a established fan base, crowdfunding is a great way to deepen the relationships, because people literally become more invested in the process. And I see this again and again, that act of putting some money into whatever it is that you're doing, it kind of works like a bond between you and that other person. They're much more likely to come back and see how that project turned out, and to come back again the next time and the next time and the next time for your future projects.
Very much so. And I think it's probably worth pointing out at this stage that the crowdfunding is very much not a passive process. So a lot of people think that it's a case of, you put your page up and make a little video and, embed some audio. That won't get you terribly far at all. You do have to become pretty active in engaging with people, in mobilizing people, in doing all those things and spreading your network out. I mean, it is quite hard work, but like I say, you're doing double duty, or you're raising money for what you want to do and broadening and deepening that fan base. So it really is one of those things. The more you're prepared to put in, the more you'll get out. And at Greenlit, what we try and do is advise as much as we can. So we've done many campaigns over the years. So we tend to see what works, what's effective, and we try and just give a little bit of hands-on advice to say, this is a sort of direction that we've seen work for other people. Maybe it's going to work with you. So we can give you that little bit of advice, but it's going to be down to you to actually put the final bit of drive into it.
Absolutely. And you're leading perfectly into the next topic. What makes a successful campaign? And we want to give you just a few tips to get you started. So the first thing I would like to say, preparation is really important. So don't try to jump into it, with 1 week notice. Take a few weeks or even months to prepare and really make sure that this is the project that is worth crowdfunding. So whoever is potentially going to support your project, they will see whether you have thought this through and how much time you've spent in putting together your page and your proposal. So it's really important that you pick something that you care about and that you are happy to be involved with for a few months at the very least. Crowdfunding is not the most easy thing in the world. So you want to make sure that you're fully behind the project that you're trying to crowdfund. Personally, I think the most important building stone for a project is the team. So as I said before, if you don't have other people on board, maybe try to collaborate with people. The bigger your team is, the easier crowdfunding will be. And so collaborating with other artists is a great way. But if you have 5, 6 band members, then maybe you already have everything that you need to get started. That's not just to divide all the tasks that might come up, like social media and designing the campaign page, shooting the campaign video, but also to have a wider audience that you can reach out to, your network, whether that's personal, professional, and then also your individual fan bases. We personally at Greenlit encourage people to do a soft launch. And that's a really important tool as well. So with a soft launch, you have a phase that can be a few days or even a few weeks, where you launch your campaign privately to a selected amount of people. And it allows you to gain some momentum before you actually publicly launch your campaign. And that is an invaluable time to kind of test and try your project, to get feedback from people, to see how it's received, if everything is easy to understand, if something's missing, but also to build up a momentum of pledges that come in. And then once you publicly launch, you don't have to start with 0, you start with a big splash, and people can see, oh, there are actually other people interested in this, so I want to be part of that as well.
It's a very curious psychological effect. And you see it, and it's often called the empty restaurant syndrome, is that, you know, if you're walking down Brick Lane and one restaurant is thronging and one restaurant is really quiet, you're going to make an intuitive, immediate assumption about which one of those restaurants is any good. Now, that's based on nothing to do with the food because you haven't tried it, but it's exactly the same when you launch a campaign. If you go into it without much preparation, without much momentum, people will look at it and it's been going for a week and it's raised 50 quid, and everyone will go, well, on first glance, people will think that there's not much happening there. So what Magdalena says is precisely correct, in that by doing a private preview and a soft launch and building up, so when you go public on the first day, everybody's like, wow, something going on here. Let's come and have a little look. Simple, pure social proof.
Absolutely. And my last bit of advice for this would be, talk to about your project to everyone as much as you possibly can. It's all about the outreach. And as Peter has said before, obviously a lot of musicians are not really comfortable with, you know, having to sell yourself and present yourself all the time, putting yourself out there. But it is a skill that without that skill, you just can't survive as an artist nowadays. It's really impossible. And someone else who's willing to do that will always go further than you if you're not willing to do it. I personally find that it's really encouraging to get people's feedback and comments and positive feedback on the project. And it's a great way to see how people react to it. So when I started properly doing marketing for my own music, I realized that I didn't really know who my audience are and what they like about my music. And I've learned so much about that. You will get insight into demographics. You will get personal feedback, but you will also get a general direction of who is this music actually for, who reacts to my music in which way. And so take that opportunity and don't miss out on speaking to literally everyone that you come across throughout the entire campaign. It's really important to not sit back and wait for things to happen on their own, because they hardly ever do. You have to go out there and you have to spread the word yourself.
Absolutely.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about a few additional features for music campaigns that we can offer at Greenlit. We've kind of touched on some of them. An obvious one is, if you are starting a campaign that is to create and sell merch, then the campaign doesn't necessarily have to end once you've reached your goal and everyone has gotten their merch items. You can actually convert your page into your personal band store and can leave it up and running.
Yeah, this is not something the other platforms do. Indiegogo has it in a kind of limited way. I think they call it in demand. But it's something we've started from, we've built in as quite an important ongoing way to support musicians.
Yeah. And the other thing that you can do, and this is something that I've tried a few times and it's been working really well for my campaigns, is hosting concerts, whether they're pre-recorded or whether they're live, on Greenlit to collect money for your campaign. And the great thing about this is you can make this into a real life event. So you can invite everyone, you can come together and have this moment of living the music together. It's again something that encourages people to donate, because on the spot they're excited. We always feel like this is a moment to connect with each other. The fans can connect and can talk in the chat box, and you will probably get an increase in donations, and you can sell tickets for that. But furthermore, you can also leave those concerts up and put them up for viewing on demand, and so you can keep earning from these concerts as you go along.
Yeah. And this is something we kind of learned during the pandemic and during lockdown. we started doing live events and discussions, and that mutated into actually being able to do gigs. And I see Ted is watching. Hi, Ted. We were very pleased to do a concert with Magdalena and Ted. So the act of people being together, again, I think it's a form of social proof, and everybody's kind of in the room, and again, it's that interaction with the artist, with the musicians. So there's something, almost like, even though we're all sat in our own individual rooms watching Zoom, it's actually the case that people get excited around events, and people will contribute more, and they'll learn more about you. So it's a very, very valuable tactic for crowdfunding and marketing in general.
Absolutely. And while you're mentioning Ted, he had a question, and I'm just going to show that in a second. Basically, the question is, do you think crowdfunding's chances in music are naturally more restricted to projects with a visual element, like videos, films, and concerts?
That's a good question, and I don't have I can't give a data-backed response because I don't have thousands of comparable projects to go, which would probably be the correct way to do it. I would say the project itself doesn't necessarily have to have a strong intrinsic visual component. I don't think that's particularly significant at all. It could be purely for a very recording or a classical recording, or so very much it doesn't have to be an intrinsic part. When you are doing your campaign, there's nothing more that's a bigger turn off than like a giant block of text on the page, like something like that. People will take one glance at it and go, So in terms of the promotional materials and the campaign page itself, and you will probably need a video, but it doesn't have to be a supremely visual one. It could simply be yourself in front of a piano. You do need to break up the page with a few visual components, because people, particularly online, do tend to react in a certain way these days. So if you're scrolling through a video, you've got generally 15 seconds to grab somebody's attention. So if you're making a video, you start with a bit of a bang. What's more important, I think, in terms of visual elements, is it needs to be authentic and consistent with the project itself. So as long as you've got something that's a little bit interesting, it's really about the music. And I'd also add another thing we can do on Greenlit is you can build your page and embed sound files. You can embed SoundCloud or any kind of audio thing. So you could almost build a playlist up on your page, or show a musical progression, or show a journey, and actually structure sound in that kind of way. So that's another aspect. So it's a very long-winded way of saying, as long as your page is not a great big chunk of undiluted, boring text, you don't necessarily have to have a huge visual component to the project itself.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that there's a big difference between this is the result or the product that you're trying to create, and this is the journey and your campaign, how you tell that story of you making that project happen. Those are two separate things. And it's going to be slightly different. So you might not want to go into every detail. For example, if you release an album, you might not maybe want to talk about every single thing that you do musically, but you really want to show people why you're making this album and how you've chosen the songs and your journey as an artist, that you came to this point of making the album. It's much more a people-fronted a people-fronted thing than it is a product that you just put out there. So it's about how you tell that story. And if that is engaging and visual aspects will play into this a lot, then it will be interesting for people to watch and to follow.
Yeah, very, very much so. And, it's more of a film/theatre thing, but I always talk about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And Joseph Campbell was a writer, and he wrote about the structure of stories and kind of influenced a bit by Carl Jung. And he identified patterns in stories that kind of have a natural echo and a natural rapport with the people telling them and with the people listening to them. And one of them is the hero's journey. And there are countless hero's journeys from Arthurian legend through to Star Wars. And the clue is it's about a journey, and the hero goes on a journey, and he will have ups and downs and ups and downs and ups, and there's a final battle, and it's very difficult, and then finally the hero wins in the end. And people do like to see both sides of it. So if you're having a creative process that is challenging and is difficult and frustrating, you know, people want to share that with you as much as the kind of, you know, the glossier, more elegant, more easy aspects. I hope that makes sense. But people really do want to see what you're going through as an artist.
Yeah, it all comes down to storytelling in the end.
Storytelling, precisely.
Yeah. So if you're interested in putting together a crowdfunding campaign, if you have an idea or a music project that you like to potentially fund with crowdfunding, you can reach out to us directly with this link, greenlit.com/create-music. And there are several ways how this can go. So if you have a project ready to go, you can submit your project right away through the platform. If you have an idea and you're not quite sure how to make this happen, or if you have questions for us, you can contact us directly on this page, and we will set up a free consultation with you and help you to develop your project. This is maybe something we should mention about Greenlit. We charge the same fees as all the other crowdfunding platforms, but what you get on top of that is free support throughout the whole campaign. So from the preparation to during the campaign to afterwards, we are there for you every step of the way. And we do this because we are creatives ourselves and we love what we do and we believe in it.
Sure.
And we want you to succeed. We want you to find your audience and make your project happen. So if you have any questions whatsoever or want to maybe start a project, then reach out to us.
Yeah, and I'd add that we learn all the time from our interactions with our creatives. So if you have any ideas about, you know, what you're working on and what you want to achieve with it and how you want to get there, run it by us, and you know, if we can come up with something and make that happen outside the confines of what we're doing already, we're really welcoming and receptive to new ideas.
Absolutely. Great. So thank you so much for tuning in. Feel free to reach out to us. And if you have any more questions as you maybe watch this on demand later, feel free to put them in the comment section. I will look again in a few hours and also tomorrow to make sure to answer all of your questions. Peter, thank you so much for being here and talking about this.
Thank you, Magdalena. Thank you for organising it, and thanks to everybody watching. And I really hope this has been helpful.
Bye.